Hey everybody, I am Kathryn Gaines and I am going to talk about color theory a little bit. So hold on one second, I'm going to try and pull this live up on my tablet so I can see your comments better while I use my phone to try and show you what I'm doing today. Alrighty, so I am the owner of Brickhouse Bakery. A lot of you guys probably have seen my macaron photos lately. I make macarons and I do cakes, so I am not one of you sugar cookie people. My hat goes off to you guys because it is something I do not have the patience to do. I have tried, and I make them once a year with my best friend's kids, and that's it. So that's what I do. I have no air conditioning right now in my house. It is about 85 degrees in my kitchen right now, so I'm gonna pump through this, and this might be a little shorter than most of the Facebook Lives, but I'm gonna try and do this. And because there's no air conditioning going on right now, my husband's in the next room playing video games, so if you hear a few outbursts, that is what's going on. So that is what's happening, and I am going to show off my cute little phone mount thing that I just got. This was one of these crazy Instagram purchases, and it literally just showed up today, so it was perfect timing, and I'm going to try and use that to sort of show you guys the color theory stuff. So here's a cool little mount. I literally got this a couple hours ago, so there will be a better review going on later. But it's pretty cool. Has a light down here. There's a light up here, which I'm obviously not using because I don't need to light up the bottom of the pan that's on my crazy racks up here in my stupid kitchen. But that is that, and I guess it actually has a camera in it too, and so you can use this to record, but I have not picked that up and figured out how to use that yet, because like I said, it literally showed up like 2 hours ago and that was dinner time. So once I figure this out, maybe there will be another live, just like a cute little thing in the group. So I'm gonna pop my phone over into this and we're gonna look at some colors. And Thumby, I will send you a link later. I have to find it again. So, basic color theory. We're gonna start at the beginning, probably stuff you learned in like elementary school with paints, but I'm gonna use buttercream because that's something we probably all use. And so, primary colors. I know in my little snippet saying when I was talking about what I was going to do for this live, I talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So right now we are looking at the 3 primary colors: red, yellow, blue. These I try to make as like your typical red, yellow, blue that you would find in like your Crayola crayon box or whatever. So primary colors. These are the colors that you need in order to make any other color ever. If we were talking about light, that would be a different thing. We're not going to go into light. We're going to just talk about the stuff that we're using here physically, and this will also transfer into things like our packaging, marketing materials and stuff. We can use some of these concepts for that as well. So I'm just going to start out and we're going to make some secondary colors. So how do we make secondary colors? We start with our primary colors. So I'm going to start with orange. So orange uses red and yellow. I'm going to take my little bowl here, take some yellow, take some red, and mix. And obviously I needed more yellow because red is, I used a ton of pigment in my red to make it red really fast earlier today. So, I love that you are learning colors from children's shows. That's totally awesome. We can always use refreshers. Actually, my husband and I have been watching Disney movies lately. We've been buying some of the Blu-rays, and it's really interesting to see at least how the early ones like Snow White and Pinocchio we've been watching. They really kind of teach things like manners and like proper cleaning and stuff, like wash your hands and stuff before you have dinner. So it's been really kind of fun to like see how even Disney really early on when they were making movies worked some of that stuff into the shows. Alright, so here's orange, pretty good orange, kind of reddish, but we're gonna stick with that for now. Next we're gonna make green, so yellow and blue. I'm gonna use just a tiny dab of blue in this because obviously blue is darker than yellow. So. Alright. Sorry about the noise, guys. I'm just using my normal dishes and they're a little loud. But hopefully it's not too sharp coming through the microphone. Alright, so here's our poorly mixed green. There we go, that's better. Green. And then purple. Purple is always interesting and sort of a difficult color for bakers to make, especially right out of the box. So sometimes it can actually be easier to mix your own with the red and the blue. I think most bottles of pigment actually have way more blue in them, so you end up with like a really bluish kind of purple. So that can just be frustrating to make purple. And also these are really pigmented, so I'm gonna add a little bit of my white. This looks like ketchup right now. I don't know if you can see it, but so I need a little more blue. Alright. So yeah, purple is always the hardest because red and blue are generally just more intense than the yellow. The yellow like brightens things up and stuff. So oftentimes it's hard to like from the bottle to get it, but also it can be hard to mix as well. So this is still really dark. So I'm gonna try and help you guys figure out like if you have a color that you're having a hard time matching, or the bottle color does not look the way you want it to look, how we can make that work better. And purple's also really hard, and we'll get into that in a little bit, because most of our icing, at least my icing I'm using as a cake baker, buttercream has butter in it, which has yellow in it. And I'll talk about why yellow and purple end up with an interesting mix sometimes. So we're gonna stick with this as our purple. It's not great right now, but I don't want to spend too long trying to make purple. So now we sort of have our rainbow like we would have in kindergarten. Obviously the rainbow, Roy G. Biv, there's indigo involved. That's because of light, which I said we're not going to get into. So we have our 3 red, yellow, blue primaries, and then orange, green, purple as our secondary colors. So now, where do these tertiary ones come in? Tertiary colors go in between. So when you mix your orange and your yellow, you end up with yellow-orange, or yellow-green, or green-blue. So those are tertiary colors. I'm only going to mix a few of these because otherwise we're going to end up spending a long time, and you guys will get the picture. But, so, we have red-orange, yellow-orange, coming in between. Actually, I'm going to mix them all real fast because it's going to make a difference in what we're about to do. I should have made more green, but we're going to stick with it. So, yellow-green, and for whatever reason, when you're talking about your tertiary colors, you always start the name with the primary color. So blue-green, yellow-green, red-orange, and such. So that's how you can remember those names. Blue-violet, also known as indigo. And then red, violet. Okay, so now we have our color wheel. So this is a typical color wheel with primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So what is important about the color wheel? It can help us make color pairings. Okay, let me move this so you guys can see the whole circle now. Alright, so I'm going to put red at top just to make it a little bit easier for us. So color wheel, there are relationships on a color wheel. So when we're talking about colors, there's warm colors and there's cool colors. Warm colors are these red yellows over here. Cool colors are the blues, greens, bluish purple, the yellow green. Those are your cool colors. So as an interior designer, which is my day job, obviously I'm not typically using these bright colors in my day job. I'm using a lot of like browns, grays, whites. White's actually a really interesting color, shall we say, because there are a lot of warm whites, cool whites, and whites, there's very few just like pure whites. And so the warm, cool stuff comes into play, especially when you're talking about things that are not like these bright colors. Like if you're looking at a brown, you could have a really cool brown because there's a little more blue in it, or you could have a warmer brown that has more reddish orange tones in it. And I, in my day job, kind of run into, I have a quirk, I guess, when I'm designing, and I do not like it when people mix their warm grays and cool grays together, or warm browns and cool browns, because you end up with like more reddish and then more bluish tones. That really just throws me off in the whole design. So that's something you can think about when you're working on your color palettes for your cookies or your cakes, or even for your logos or your packaging and stuff, is trying to keep the colors more towards the warm side or more towards the cool side, and not necessarily mixing them because they don't always work together. To that end, now we're going to talk about color relationships, and you don't necessarily want to mix these colors, but you can work them together. So there are what are called analogous colors. So the colors that are next to each other are called analogous. So you could use the red, red-orange, orange, and yellow-orange all together, and they will be perfectly happy together. They all work together. They're all very similar in color to each other. Obviously, once you get more down to yellow versus red, theirs are different, but they still work well together. Then, the next color relationship is called triadic. This is where they're going thirds on the color wheel. So you have like your red, blue, yellow, those are triadic. And then you can do the same thing with your secondary colors. So like your red, orange, or that's a tertiary actually, but orange, purple, and green, those are triadic. And once again, you can do that with your tertiary ones too. So if they're all completely 1/3 apart on the color wheel, they work well together. Obviously, as we talked about the red, blue, yellow relationship, that's kind of cramboxy a little bit. Sometimes it looks a little simplified. So if you're just using those 3 bright colors, that'd be great for like the back to school sets that are going on right now, or teacher thank you gifts and stuff. You might not want to use that for like a sophisticated wedding or something. Probably not going to be the right color scheme for that. But you could tone all of those colors down with white and have a really soft pink, a soft blue, and a creamy yellow, and that would look really pretty in a wedding setting or at a tea party or something. So the next relationship for colors are called complementary. So you all probably have seen red and green, Christmas time, super obvious. I'm from the Chicago area originally. I am a Richmond, Virginia transplant. So when I see blue and orange together, I automatically think Chicago Bears. Those are their colors, or University of Illinois. Those are also their colors. So if you're directly across the color wheel, those are complementary. Purple and yellow, that's another one. Blue, violet, and yellow, orange. Those guys go together really well. So those are colors that will like really pop against each other. They really they're just complete opposites. So you know how people say opposites attract? Color opposites attract as well. Hold on, I'm gonna take a sip of water. All right. So there's some other color relationships I'm not going to get into. They're a little bit more complicated and not necessarily something that's going to be like super helpful or something that we're all going to really use a lot. Colors also have meanings that are often associated with them, and actually I found a really good like reference sheet that I'm actually looking at to like remind me what I'm going to talk about, and I can post that in the event page later because it's really helpful. It's kind of going over really quickly what I'm talking about today. It has a much better looking color wheel than my little paint palette going on here, but it so color meanings, it's on there. Red, warm. Obviously, you think about fires, or I mentioned the other day on one of the posts that was trending that fast food restaurants often use red, orange, and yellow colors in their logos. So you think about McDonald's has the red logo with the yellow arches, and Wendy's is red and yellow. Chick-fil-A is red. KFC is red. Popeyes is orange, I think. I should have brought that up because I don't really remember. But these warm colors are appetizing, and they make you want to eat food because food colors that are comfortable are more on this side. When you get over here into the purples and blues, you don't really have food in nature that's blue. Actually, there is no such thing as a blue flower. I know there are ones that are called blue, but my husband took a horticulture class in college, and he claims that there's literally not a single flower that is blue. So there are blue-ish ones but not like super blue. So blue is not a natural color, so we have to be careful when we're coloring food blue because it is not something that people's brains are ingrained to eat. So actually, speaking of that, I have a partially melted thing of buttercream here. And guess what? It's in a white container, but my buttercream is not white because butter is not white. Your cookies probably all have butter in them. Guess what? Your cookies aren't white. Royal icing, I think that gets a lot whiter than my buttercream gets. But if you're doing cakes, vanilla cakes and stuff, most of them are not going to be white because you have egg yolks, you have butter. That stuff's not white. So it gets interesting when we're trying to color things. If I'm trying to take my not quite white buttercream and add blue to it, what am I gonna get? Of course, I have some purple in there, so I'm gonna pull that out. I am gonna get, and hopefully it'll show up a little bit, but it's not quite blue like the blue that I have originally is. There's a little bit of teal color to it, right? Because I'm mixing my yellow primary color over here with my blue primary color over here, so I'm getting slightly greenish. So what do we do to offset the white? A lot of people will use a little bit of purple. And when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. When it comes to using purple or things on opposite sides of the color wheel, things get a little crazy because that is how we make brown or black. So see, I added a little bit of purple and it's taken a little bit of that yellow away. So you can add a little bit of purple to cut down on the yellow, but you have to be really careful, otherwise you're going to end up with a grayish, brownish, kind of crazy color. So what am I talking about? About mixing colors on opposite sides of the color wheel. So if I take my purple and my yellow, I'm going to end up with brown. When you mix colors on opposite sides of the color wheel, which are called your complementary colors, which we talked about, you end up with brown. And then if we add in some red, eventually we'll get to black. I'm not going to keep mixing that because it's going to take more pigment than I have mixed into these. But if you mix colors from opposite sides, like your red and your green, you're going to end up with brown. So I often kind of cringe sometimes when I see people putting red and green in a piping bag together and doing swirls, because it'll work to a certain extent, but eventually when you get to the bottom, you're probably going to end up with like brown poop blobs, which if that's what you're going for, cool, but just be careful when you're mixing things on opposite sides. If you're working on stuff that's together, that's analogous, those relationships, those will work really well in a piping bag together. This side, any side, it doesn't matter. You don't have to just stick with the warms or the cools. You can cross sides up and bottom and whatever. But when you're going across the color wheel, you're going to end up with brown when they start mixing fully. All right, so we talked about brown a little bit. And now I'm going to talk about black, because black is another color that gets interesting when it comes to trying to use right out of the gel container. So I'm going to take my slightly yellow buttercream and mix it in this bag. And I right now am out of my AmeriColor color black. It's what I normally use. Sorry for the shakes. So I'm using Cake Craft. I got it at Sur La Table. They were going out of business in my town, and I got some of their colors. They're actually pretty good. So I'm gonna shoot not a ton of black onto this because I want to show you why sometimes we have interesting things happen when we're trying to make black. So I'm going to mix this around. So their black is a pretty true black, but as you can see, hopefully, it shows up, at least for my eye, it looks a little bit greenish, and that could be because of the yellow going on with my icing, or it could be just because this black, the way that they mix their pigments together, has a little bit more green or yellow in it than pure black. So to get this to a more pure black, this would probably actually mix pretty well after it sat. It would probably turn pretty black. But since it's kind of greenish, to me, I want this a little bit more of a true black. I am going to add some of my red because red is on the opposite side of the color wheel from green. I'm just going to add a little bit because, like I said, I squeezed a ton of red food coloring into that red buttercream earlier today to make it really red for us tonight. Alright, so like I said, I don't know how well it's going to come through the screen, but to me, it's looking more like a pure gray. So if you end up with a color that's not quite leaning the direction you want it on the color wheel, pick a color that's the opposite side of the color wheel and add a little bit of that in. Start just really small because you don't know how big of a difference it's going to make. So I'm going to do another black example because I found this really interesting the other week. I don't work with fondant a lot. I do sculpt with fondant sometimes though. So this is some fondant I made, just some marshmallow fondant. It's white. And then this was some black I bought. I generally do not mix my own black fondant because it's really hard to get the amount of pigment in it and get it to work. So I was using this black the other day to sculpt some really cute kittens for a groom's cake. And I was mixing it in to my white because I didn't need black kittens. I needed brown kittens. So I'm going to mix this up real fast and show you what I found. It was really interesting. It's just going to show you guys how, like, this is black. If you look at this, it's really black. But I'm going to show you what it looks like when I mix just a tiny little bit of it in with my white. And it's just going to show you guys the differences in all the black pigments and why sometimes things don't look the way we want them to look and why we sometimes have to doctor them. So, sorry, my marshmallow fondant, I added way too much powdered sugar to it, so it's really dry. So don't judge my fondant based on this, but it's just some junk fondant at this point, so I just wanted to show you guys using this because it's white. So it's not perfectly mixed, but it's mixed enough for you guys to see what I'm talking about. See this? This is not gray. This is brown. I mixed super black fondant with white, and you would think I'd end up with a nice gray color, but I didn't. This is nice and brown. So this fondant brand, which is Fonderific, by the way, it's actually a really nice fondant to work with. They have a lot of red in their black. So if I needed this gray, I would have to add some blue or purple to make this more of a gray color instead of a brown. Luckily for me, I just needed brown. So this worked out actually really well. This was pretty much the same color. I used a little bit more black than I did tonight. But once I was done mixing it the other day, it actually was pretty much the perfect color for the little kittens I needed to copy. But that just goes to show that we have to be really careful with our food colorings. So if you switch brands, their black might look different from the black you're using. And so it's just knowing this color wheel and knowing how to use the opposites will help you make the color you're looking for. Hopefully that's really helpful. I can take some questions now. I know it's only been half an hour, but I literally have sweat dripping down my back. TMI, sorry, it's hot in here. But also, these are just things to think about, not when you're just decorating cookies, but when you're also creating your marketing materials and stuff. Like when you're picking colors for your logo or for your new boxes that your logo is going to be on, you don't necessarily want everything to be all in the same color range. Maybe you do. Maybe that's your brand, is that you are the Oceanside Bakery or something, and so you want to keep it all in the blues, purples, greens. That's totally cool. Or you're the Fireside Bakery and you keep in the red, yellow, oranges. That's awesome. But if you want to be like big and bold and have your logo stand out on a background, you probably want to use your complementary colors, which are the ones across from each other. Like red, green, that can get interesting. You probably want to use the right red and green so it doesn't read Christmassy to people, because color relationships are another thing that are really important to know about, how people perceive colors or remember colors. Like I said, Christmas, or me, orange and blue, I think the Chicago Bears always. But those opposites are really great. So you might not want like red, but you could do more like a maroon kind of color, and then like more of an evergreen kind of color. And those would look really pretty together. Femby, you're asking about replica surfaces and their brand of colors. I have no idea, actually. I love replica surfaces. I think that they are really pretty. I'm not actually using one, if that's what you think I'm looking at. This is my kitchen countertop. It's a, I think it's IKEA. I don't know that they sell it anymore, but that's what I use. I am really interested in replica surfaces though, because like I said, they look really pretty. I think Corey and Heather were curious if their surfaces were food safe though. So not sure about that. And I'm not sure about their brand colors. I should look it up. Hold on. Give me a second, Lemby. Alright, we'll talk later. I'll see you in a couple weeks in person. So that'll be good. Any other questions before I wrap this up? Doesn't look like it. Feel free to ask questions on the replay and stuff. And I hope this was helpful. I'm sorry it's a little shorter than it probably would have been. Alright, Samantha, since brown is mixed complementary colors, what would you use alongside it on a cake? So that's a really good point. Brown can really work with anything. Brown's an awesome color because of that. Since it's colors from across the color wheel, you can pretty much use anything. My suggestion would be, if it's like a chocolate cake, which is generally going to be a darker brown, you probably want to use something a little lighter that's going to show up better on it. So I would probably use pastel colors, or yellow obviously is pretty bright, you could use that, or like a brighter green, but pretty much any color will work with brown, black, or white, because they're a mix of the colors in the color wheel. Bridget, yes, the Miracles are pretty good about posting these pretty much as soon as the live ends, so you should be able to watch the replay right away. Yeah, chocolate frosted cakes, browns look good on them. I would generally wouldn't mix brown and black, just because They are not generally work well together. Some people do it. If you're doing sort of like a rock formation cake or something, that could be kind of cool using brown and black, but pretty much any color would work really well. Like I said, stay away from the darker colors because they won't really show up as well on a brown cake. Alright, so it looks like questions are over. I am gonna cut this short, and I hope, like I said, I hope this was useful, and ask any questions later. You guys can search my name in the group or hunt me down and send me a message or something, and if I come up with any other things that I feel like I missed, I will post that in the group or in the live, and I'll also post that color theory sheet that I was talking about earlier, because I think that'll be really helpful for you guys to see that on print versus my crazy buttercream color wheel that I have here. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed this.